I think she held them back. Oh.
Boker Tov, which
Hello.
means good morning in Hebrew. Boker Tov. Sounds like you broke your toe, but it's not. It's Boker Tov. Tov in Hebrew is good. In the first chapter of Genesis, Tov, Tov, God says Tov, and then on Tuesday he says Tov Me'od, very good. So Tuesday and Friday are those two places where God is excited. That's why, for example, weddings in Israel usually take place on Tuesday because the word good appears twice. So it's a good day to get married.
Anything that helps.
So I'm waiting for Chris because I wanted her to do an introduction to what we're doing. Chris, whenever you're ready, we'll start.
Thank you.
We
You
are.
have to push there so they can stand here so you can be there too. Yeah, but push the button.
It's already going.
Okay. Thank you for warning me. Yeah,
I started it when you said hello. I'm Chris Alexander. That would be Reverend Dr. Chris Just got to get that on film one more time so then I can stop celebrating. Yeah, drink every time I say that. That's a good one. We are starting a brand new worship series next Sunday called Nevertheless She Persisted. And it's going to include some voices of the women of the Bible. And we have 3 of those women, 4 actually, are from the Hebrew Bible. So we have talked to the Rabbi, and he has graciously accepted to give us some background on those women in the Hebrew Bible. And then to talk about the composite nature of some of the women of we can't decide what to call it, the Second Testament or something, the other Testament of the Bible. That includes the Syrophoenician woman, the Samaritan woman at the well, and Mary Magdalene. So there are some backgrounds to the idea of the well in the New Testament. There are some ideas about women of prostitutes that are echoed in the New Testament from the Old Testament. There are those kinds of things that we're looking at, and those are the things we'll inform. And we're thinking, I just set a schedule in front of you for the dates of this conversation, and the July 3rd date we had listed as a holiday because usually the office is closed, but that might actually be happening on Tuesday rather than Monday. So we're thinking we would like to go ahead and meet that day. Is that all right with all of you? Are you all going to be around? So on those dates that I just gave you on the slides, switch the 10th with the 3rd, and we'll be done on the 3rd, July 3rd, okay? That way the rabbi can get back to Israel to be with his family, okay? The main point of the worship series is to think about the women of the Bible, not just because we want to know more about the women of the Bible, which there is very little information about, but what we're listening for when we listen to the stories from the women of the Bible is how do the women of the Bible depict who God is. Every story that we read from the Bible is about who God is and how God works in the world, right? So what does the scripture that we're going to be reading, what do the women's voices, what do the cultural contexts say to us about how we point to who God is and how God works in the world? Those are the questions that we're asking from these texts. So keep that in mind. It's not just a feminist move on my part, which is a good one, I must say. But it is also a chance for us to just look at a different perspective of how God is viewed in the world, right? And women's voices are a big part of that. So we're going to concentrate on that for this series. So welcome to the Rabbi. Thank you so much for doing this. Now that I'm a doctor, you have to help me get up.
Anytime. Thank you again for the opportunity to teach in this congregation. I love it. we thought about doing something that will be parallel. So on the weeks before Dr. Chris preaches,
Never gets old.
it'll be important to give the text, and so you have really two pieces of material. One is the text for those all those women that Chris is planning to teach. So maybe you should leave the text here at the end of. I mean, first of all of you have Bibles, so you don't need the text; it's there already. But it'll be nice to leave it here so we can use it every Monday instead of making copies and destroying nature. So let me make an introduction also to those women of the Bible. There are a lot of women, a lot of voices. Some of them are in the Jewish Bible, maybe one verse. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, don't skip the material, for God's sake. There are a lot of piles there. Sometimes just the name of a woman appears with no words coming out of her mouth. She's the silent character there, and we'll check those names. And sometimes there's a revelation that takes place. There's a conversation with God, and there are the prostitutes and the matriarchs, who sometimes when you see what the matriarchs are doing, especially Sarah in Egypt, it's an interesting story. But we wanted to pay attention today to the triangle of Abraham, Sarai, or Sarah later, or Hagar. So the word for Hagar in Hebrew is Hagar. And by the way, Hagar is the first woman in the Bible that God speaks to her, which is interesting. It's not the matriarchs that God speaks to. It is the Egyptian maid slave, that God speaks to her, which is fascinating. I have been always interested in this triangle, because I think that triangle is still going on to our days, and the deep inside of me, the Tri-Faith initiative is an attempt actually to finally resolve the conflict, and I hope it can happen. So part of the excitement about the initiative is that maybe there is a way, with the help of Christianity, in solidifying and creating a more harmonious day between the Jews and the Arabs. Maybe we couldn't do it by ourselves, and we needed a church like Countryside to come forward and help us in negotiating that relationship. I'm just putting it down there. Only God knows if I'm right or not. I'm not so much interested in, if you open the material, you'll see that there is a lot of material about Sarah. Before we get to the story of Hagar and Sarah, actually the doctor created an interesting way of putting the text in. Hagar is at the end. So if I...
I'm going to do it in 2 parts, that's why.
Yeah. So this is not how the text appears. Of course, the text appears as one unit from the beginning to the end. But in a way, it's very helpful the way you did it. So we'll start there. So what are some of the information that you are aware, without looking at the text, about the character, about Avram, Sarai, and Hagar? What do you know? Nothing. Okay, that's a good beginning. I feel so encouraged now.
Well, we know that Sarah is unable to have a child. Right.
Beautiful.
And she thinks that her husband needs a son. Always a son. Always a son. Needs a son to carry forth.
Jesus was a man.
I heard
Yeah.
that. Reverend Dr. Chris told us that.
Oh, we need to say Reverend Doctor. Wow. That makes it so much more complicated. Yeah.
Anyway, we also know that Star was their maid, and that she was a slave, and I guess I had the idea always that Sarah just really didn't like her very much
Beautiful.
at any level, because she was another woman in the household, and maybe because she felt, I'm just writing her own story. I didn't read it.
You're good.
She maybe feels less of a woman because she's unable to have a child, and she's probably thinking that Hagar is able to have a child, and that, so why does she want her around? It's just one more slap in the face.
Excellent.
And
That's a lot of
as-
information,
As
yeah.
the more she thinks about it, maybe she's the one that can bear him a child.
Any other additional? So this is basically the story. We're going to read the text. Open to the second, actually the page that says Hagar. Page 4. Page 4, let us read first the text, and then what I did is I put together 12 pages of commentary on those few verses. By the way, 12 pages from 175 pages that exist, because it's an amazing relationship that Judaism took seriously. And you'll see by the end of reading the material how much more complicated the story gets. And it's not a story that belongs to the past, it's a story that happens every day in our homes, in our relationship with the women that are at home, I'm putting it generally, and in the relationship between husband and wives. So those moments will be coming into the commentary. But let's read. Who would like to read? Chapter 16, Genesis, the beginning. Oh, come on, you're used to me already. You have to read. Yes, please.
Okay, go with, and I don't have to do it again, right?
I will make a decision about it.
I do a really bad job, I won't have to.
Verse 16.
Now Sarai.
Sarai still,
Sarai.
yeah. Sarai, the name was not changed. Okay, she's still in the period of maybe God checking her out. The name changes to Sarah. Okay, continue.
Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children. She had an Egyptian slave girl whose name was Hagar.
How do you like this opening sentence?
Hagar.
Now Sarai, Avram's wife, bore him no children. Wow.
Yeah, it's all her fault.
I mean, yes, exactly. It's her fault. By the way, you have permission to look at a picture here. Look at a picture of the material that I gave you.
Empty.
Empty, Lady of Sorrow, that's the name of the piece. Take a look at her face. She's carrying the empty womb.
If you know any woman who has not been able to have children or who has miscarried children, that's very poignant.
Oh my God. Continue, tell me why.
Well, just looking at that, hits me pretty hard. Because someone who's very close to me has never been able to have children, and another person who's really close to me had 5 miscarriages.
Yeah. Look at her face.
To look at that just really pulls at your heart. I think it just is really.
And basically, there's nothing else that we know about her except the way she carries her empty womb.
And it's because there's so much emphasis on, like you said, I'm not a real woman unless I can have a child. And I think in the past that emphasis was just so strong that
In the
I
past.
think, and I also today, but
Oh my,
I think
yeah.
I think through the years there's been more of an emphasis that there's more to being a woman than just. Huh, I shouldn't have said that.
No, no.
More to being a woman than being a vessel for a child. But still, there's that innate feeling of how special we are, that we are able to give life to that child for 9 months and then push that child from our bodies, and so it's a real, I don't know, that's very hard to look at. To see.
But we must look at this.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
but it's just, I looked at that and
Yeah.
immediately I went, oh my God.
And then they always throw in the word, she was blessed with this many children. She was blessed
Right.
with a child.
Right.
So then that woman that does not have a child feels like forsaken.
Yeah, for example, we spent some time talking when I was working as a rabbi. Oh, it sounds so good. No, it sounds good that I'm not anymore, which is great. Yeah, why are you smiling? Those people come to me and say, why are you so always smiling? I'm retired, for God's sake. I mean, this is exactly what the rest of the material here is looking at those relationships. I have never been interested just to keep the story in the biblical level. Those stories are all lessons for us. And they are so relevant. Look at what just happened from one picture and the way a whole sermon came out. This is what the biblical stories are all about. So we know a lot about those women. You remember, I just want to remind you what we did before. We looked at the text, and then we look at midrashic material and commentary. So Judaism is obsessed in filling in the empty space in the Torah. We just love to continue the discussion. So in Judaism, you constantly have a conversation with a text. So basically what we do, we put our ear to the biblical text and we're listening to the conversation through the generations. So the way you described, for example, the Once Upon a Time, which we discovered that it's happening today too. I mean,
Thank goodness for modern medicine that sometimes it's not the woman's fault that she can't have children. Perhaps it's the men.
for the biblical writer, it's always the fault of, always the fault of the woman. Yeah, and we should never forgive them for that. I don't think we should ever forgive the patriarchs or the writers of the text about how they envision women and what is the role of the woman. Okay, continue, please. So she had an Egyptian slave girl.
Whose name was Hagar, and Sarai said to Abram, "You see that the Lord has prevented me from bearing children."
Wow. Well, how has she interpreted the fact that she doesn't have a child? God prevented this of happening. Prevented. Go on.
Go into my slave girl. It may be that I shall obtain children by her.
I have to tell you that the most important words here are "it may be that." What is the meaning of that sentence? Tell me about what Sarah thinks when she says "it may be that." By the way, the word, it's one word in Hebrew, ulai. Ulai. In Hebrew, it's one word. It may be. What is going on now? What's happening to Sarah?
She's hopeful.
She is hopeful.
Trying to fulfill her duty.
She's trying to fulfill.
And she's seeing it as surrogacy. I mean,
Surrogacy.
And she doesn't actually, this also tells us that she doesn't know how it's going to work. So she thinks that the woman is fertile, Hagar is fertile, but she is not clear. She did not think all the way to the end of what are the consequences. We know from reading the story that what happened very soon after she gives birth. What happens? She kicks her out. What happened? Did you think when you gave Hagar to Avram that this will happen? What did you think about? So we're going to put Sarah and Abraham and Hagar in judgments. I mean, all three of those characters are playing amazing role in this drama. Continue reading.
And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So after Abram...
Aye. Like every man. Like every good, smart man. Abraham listened to her voice. By the way, what's his option? He is desperate. He's getting older. He's desperate to have what? A son. Why? Because a daughter is nice, but we know what happened to Dina, for example. I mean, that's another tragedy that one day we need to deal with. The girl that was born to the 12 brothers. How fast she is dismissed on the pages of the Bible, and which, by the way, you have a whole Midrashi book, The Red Tent. You better read The Red Tent, because it deals, Anita Diamant is the writer, it deals with Dina. It's a beautiful modern day fiction, but it's about that story. It's a fiction, non-fiction. But this is so he listens to the voice of Sarah. His option is to say what? Are you out of your mind? He didn't say that. What else are his options?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No. Which of course then guarantees what? That there's nothing else after him. Okay, so those are the moments. Continue.
So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her slave girl.
Yeah, in case you forgot. Again, the repetition. Egyptian, what? Slave girl. Egyptian slave girl. So Hagar is not introduced by her name. There's always this additional sentence, a slave girl. Go on.
And gave her to her husband Abram as a wife. He went into Hagar and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress.
Here's Hagar role. But she is not also so innocent. So they live 10 years. Can you imagine the horror in their home for 10 years of not having a son? He's getting older and nothing is happening. God already promised him a few times that the descendants will be like the sand and like the stars, and nothing is happening. So what happens in homes where this expectation for a child is there and nothing happens? Think about, you mentioned a few of your friends, think about the difficulty, and I'm sure it's here in this room. In a way, many of us have experienced those.
Stress and blame.
I had my first child is biological, the second one we adopted. So, it was a hard period of not really knowing what's going on. And then there is always a period of those promises of insemination in hospitals where you pay tons of money and nothing happens. So, and then of course comes the visitation to different places for adoption, and then nothing happens, and you get very close and nothing happens, and then suddenly this miracle happens, and you don't know what happened, but and now he's 22, almost 23, and at age 7, around supper table, he asked us, what will happen if my real mother is coming at age 7? And then we freaked out, Elise and I came up with an answer. She never saw you, so we'll give her your sister. He started clapping hands, and she freaked out from this answer. Since then, I apologized a few times.
How old was your daughter when you...
She was 10.
10.
Well, and let me continue with one other story. So we ended up going to West Palm Beach because there was an agency there called The Chosen Children. Again, very symbolic. And we took her with us because we wanted her to be part of the welcoming of a new child to our family. We took her with us, and we were talking to the social workers, and she disappeared. She disappeared, went to another room. We didn't know what happens. She comes running out and says, I chose the child. I picked up the child. We freaked out. Because, of course, what if it's not that child? What if another child? And we rushed to the room, and there was only one child there, waiting for us. And they're in love now with each other. They always were great. 10 years difference, it's not the end of the world if there's a difference. You have to work it out, that relationship. Okay, that's a little bit of confession. I mean, I'm in a church. I feel comfortable doing it. Jews don't do this. Okay, let's continue.
Then Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my slave girl to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt.
By the way, what is the meaning? How do we feel when someone looks with contempt on us?
Less.
What can be, what?
You feel less than what you
Yeah.
are.
So tell me in what ways Hagar was capable, which we don't know.
Well, Sarah made it easy for her. She already felt bad about herself.
Beautiful.
So then regardless on her.
Regardless of how she behaved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. It's a two-way.
Yeah, but it is possible the slave girl added fire to all of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at what I have. I mean, it can
Mine. You don't have one.
mine. Yeah. And it is also possible that Abraham what? Abraham helped in this contempt because I never understood how Mormons get married to so many. I mean, how they do this. Anyway, I'm leaving it there. I'm not touching it. But it is possible that he was very affectionate to the child. We actually don't know at all what was his relationship to that child. There's nothing in the Torah. The only time we know there's something when at age 13, Ishmael, that's the name of the child, is being circumcised. And then we know what happened, how he failed when Sarah kicks them out. But anyway, Abraham, she goes full energy into condemning her husband. Go on.
May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, your slave girl is in your power. Do to her as you please.
Oh, nice man. Nice. This is our patriarch. Oh my God. This is the one we decided to follow in the tri-faith, the children of Abraham. Who wants to be his child? Look at how he responds in the most cruel, cold manner. She is your slave. Do whatever you want with her. Really? Continue.
Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she ran away from her. Oh, I thought Sarai sent her.
No, we cannot imagine even the torture. What can be the torture? What happened when you have another woman in a relationship?
Away later.
A what?
Later, she sends her away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What happens when there's another woman in a relationship? Well, I'm sure you don't have experiences. This is a group of righteous people. But think about the other woman. All the books you read about the other woman and those relationships. So she sends her away, and so what happened?
The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur.
Okay, by the way, that spring, there's a name for this in the Quran. It's Zum. That's the name of the spring. It's not in the Bible, but it's in the Quran. This story of the water appears there, and by the way, not far away from the Kaaba in Mecca, there is that little spring of water. And so before worshiping, they wash their feet in that water. That's the water where Ishmael was able to revive himself. Go on.
And he said, Hagar, slave girl of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?
Who is talking?
The angel of the Lord.
Okay, so that's the first revelation to a woman. Go on.
She said, I am running away from my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will so greatly multiply your offspring that they cannot be counted for multitude.
And God, that really worked. I mean, from Ishmael, look at what we have, the Muslim world. And so it is possible she went back because she also heard about the blessing. So God is not only blessing the offsprings of Sarai and Avram, but also the other gets the blessing. Go on.
And the angel of the Lord said to her, Now you have conceived, you shall bear a son. You shall call him Ishmael, for the Lord has given heed to your affliction.
Okay, Ishmael. Let's unpack the name. Shema is here. Ishmael. El is a short for God, Elohim. So the name is what? Why is he named Ishmael? Because God have heard the plea of the slave girl. God Shama, he heard. That's why it's Ishmael. By the way, why is it Yitzchak, Isaac? Why is Isaac named Isaac? She laughed. When she heard that at age 75 she's going to have a child, she burst into laughter, which insulted God, and God never forgave her for that piece. What are you laughing at what I'm telling you? Anyway, so you have, and the irony of this is that it's not, there's a relationship between Ishmael and Yitzchak. It's not a laughing matter. I'm trying to make sure that I'm making the connection, and all the way from that story in Genesis to what's happening in the Middle East. It's not a laughing matter. Continue.
He shall be a wild ass of a man, with his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he shall live at odds with all his kin.
Great. By the way, not only the kin doesn't mean just Isaac, but the kin means Qatar, for example. I don't know if you read in the last few days, some of the Saudi Arabia and some other Arab countries decided to break relationship with Qatar because Qatar is the country that supplies terrible amount of money to all kind of ISIS and other terrorist activities. So the kin, I mean, it's still going on. The relationship between the siblings of Ishmael, in a way, between the different Arab countries, and how the only thing that maybe unites them is their hate to refugees and Palestinians. Because if it was up to them, they can solve the issue of the Palestinian refugees years ago, but they didn't. Go on.
So she named the Lord who spoke to her, You are El Roy.
She names God. She names, it doesn't happen a lot in the Bible, of the person that is hearing God's word, naming the God, her God. You know, there's all kind of names for God. There's 99 names for God. She is naming the God. El Roi. Roi comes from, and it's explained here. For she said, have I really seen God? I saw God. Roi in Hebrew is to see. So she names the God, this experience of her with a divine presence is named. It's hers. And so it's God have seen my, continue.
For she said, Have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing him?
Wow, the fear again. You can't see God, this tradition of if you see God, you die. Gone. Therefore
the well was called Be'er Lahai Roi.
So she names the well. By the way, the word for well in Hebrew is be'er, which is fascinating. I mean, there's another half an hour of just a sermon on the meaning of the word be'er. Because be'er in Hebrew also means to interpret. So what is the beher? What are the wells that are inside of us? The well is a powerful symbol to who we are. And the easiness or the difficulty sometimes to draw anything from inside. And what about the well that is dry? And who is around the well? So there is so much material about just a well and the meaning, both mystical, spiritual, Kabbalistic issues of the well. Why there are so many wells in the Bible, in the Old Testament? Why some of the patriarchs have to build their own wells, and why some of them are using the wells of their ancestors? And what about the fight of the shepherds around the wells? So the well is a lot more than just a well. And it's always covered with a heavy stone that one of the patriarchs have to remove. That story repeats itself a few times. Just giving you a little teaser to what we're going to do later with the wells. Continue.
It lies between Kadesh and Bered.
There are two locations. Go on.
Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael.
Again, repetition. Look how many times. So she bore a son. He has a son. He named the son that comes from Hagar. We all know that. What is the reason for repeating this? There must be some kind of teaching that one can draw out of it. We'll go over this. And he named him Ishmael. How old was he when he named the child? Is it a surprise that he was so pissed off at his wife? 86. I mean, I'm sure they had some, the way you bore children. I don't want to, Okay, I mean, what happened in those 86? Okay, so assuming he got married at age 15. Can you imagine their home? What happens every morning in that house? He's 86 when the child is named. So there's a purpose of putting the age there. That maybe will exonerate Abraham for how cruel he was to his wife. I'm not sure why it's so important. So Hagar bore him Ishmael. Hagar bore him. Nothing about Sarah. Hagar is the main character. Okay, open now the material that I gave you. We already covered the front page. You don't have to read now. Who would like to volunteer to read the first paragraph? I collected commentary from different sources. And so the first one is dealing with the word ulai. What was ulai? Remember? What was ulai?
Maybe.
Maybe, okay. So who would like to read that paragraph? Come on.
I'll read it.
Yes, please.
The pain and the difficulty of
It's okay. She'll get her turn. Go ahead.
the pain and the difficulty of Sarai's act stamps itself indelibly into the text.
I hope you felt the pain in the text. Just by reading it in a simple way. Continue.
Sarai is telling her husband to sleep with another woman, a slave woman, so that he can realize his dream of patriarchy.
Wow. Do women ever do the will of their husbands? That was a rhetorical question. Yeah, where was her voice? She does what he wants. Go on.
We know that Abram and Sarai are married, and yet again and again, the text returns to rub salt into our empathetic wound. Wife of Abram. Wife of Abram. Her husband, Abram.
And there is no product. Nothing is happening from that relationship. But the text repeats itself in a way, making it worse and worse by repeating this. Go on.
Can we ever fully imagine the agony of Sarai's sacrifice? Sarai does not come to her decision easily. Even in the decision itself, there lies the torment of doubt. How do we know Sarai is entering a moment of deep uncertainty? Because she says, you lie.
Ulai.
Ulai.
Ulai. Maybe.
The key word in Jacob's life, the biblical word for doubt.
That word again appears with Jacob. Jacob had a lot of doubts. I mean, you remember some of the stories of Jacob. One day we'll go deeper into that story. Go on. It's first spoken by Sarai.
Maybe I will be built through her. Sarai knows she is infertile. She knows that Abram desperately needs a child to fulfill himself emotionally and spiritually. But she is not sure whether she should give Hagar to Abram. She is not sure whether Abram's need for a child should supersede the needs of their relationship. She is not sure whether she is going to be able to maintain the sacrifice of having her husband sleep with another. Yet she acts in the uncertainty.
I don't know anyone who has used a surrogate to have a child. Any woman who has had that experience who's used a surrogate. But I wonder, this is a little bit different because Hagar sleeps with Abram.
We don't
But
know.
in the case of...
We don't know. We don't know. We know she was assigned. Are you talking about this act? But she was assigned to be Sarai's slave. So we don't know. There was no relationship until she allowed for that relationship to happen.
Right, but she's using Hagar as a surrogate.
Okay.
So in today's age, is Sarai's problem that Hagar can have a baby, or is her problem that her husband has slept with a slave?
All of the above. I mean, the whole relationship. I
And
think.
she's jealous. What about a woman who uses a surrogate today? Do they actually go through this too, where they are jealous of the surrogate?
Well,
Because
not a
the
woman.
surrogate can have the baby that she cannot have?
I think we need to watch more movies coming from Hollywood. I mean, no. So, in my experience as a rabbi, I can tell you that at least twice in my work as a rabbi, those issues came to me. Did I follow them till today? I don't know. But it can happen, and it happens today too. How do they feel after that? There are definitely articles from psychology and psychiatric conversations, papers about this. So she appears on the biblical text, she appears to be what? Selfless, Sarai. Not even an ounce of selfishness. But this word ulai maybe shows that she is not completely comfortable with the decision she is making. I mean, this is so dramatic here. How far should a woman go in order to please her husband? I don't know if any. I mean, this is a trap kind of a question. Because I will discover immediately who you are by answering me. So don't answer me. I mean, how many women here in the room have made some sacrifices for the sake of their husbands?
Every day.
Everyone.
I'm sorry he's here, though.
No, you're not sorry. It's wonderful he's here. You're not sorry.
I was going to say the opposite, never.
Never?
Oh, the poor.
I feel compelled to disagree. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, and you think you're done with me? No, you have to go.
Agree with what she said.
He said, she said. Yeah, I love those arguments. No, I mean, how many times we men ask from our wives things that were not really fair to ask?
Every day.
Not very
Every day.
They never do it.
Oh, I'm going to say not very often in our case.
But that's your testimony.
Right, right.
I saw his face, and the face indicated completely the opposite view.
No, you said how many men make, what did you say, how did you
Ask.
ask?
How many of us, I'm including myself because I have asked some outrageous things sometimes, from our wives? Yeah, I think you guys should take this home. Take it home.
When you say outrageous, what,
Well, I mean,
where are you going with this?
I don't know where I'm going with this. I just used the word to irritate you.
No, you got me interested, I wanna know.
Okay,
what
okay.
outrageous
So, am I speaking about things that no one experienced here in this room? Come on, guys.
But I think she hit on a good point,
What?
that if he said, I
Don't
want
say he. What's his name?
David.
David. That's your husband.
Oh, is it?
David, yeah?
David,
I
if
don't know her.
David said to me, David, husband of Judy, yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Nice.
If David said to me, I want a child, and I couldn't bear a child, to me it would be very different if Chris was impregnated medically.
Will you accept it?
Yeah, I would accept that because we'd adopt the child, get rid of Chris.
Excuse me, Dr. Chris. This is a child that already has a PhD, for God's sake.
Oh geez, you're confusing. If David had to have sex, even if she's a doctor, that I think would be a whole.
Yeah, but artificial insemination only started a few years ago. For God's sake. So what if there was only one way to make her pregnant?
I think it depends on whether or not the surrogate is your friend, or the surrogate is someone you don't know.
That's another issue. I mean, those are all legal issues that are being discussed at this moment in America constantly.
But let's remember that Hagar had no say in this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if she acted,
God did not have a say because God was behind the scenes planning all this.
well, but I mean, just between the three of them,
What?
between the three of them,
Yeah.
Hagar had no say. Sarah said, Abraham.
Yeah, she was. That's what the repetition: slave, girl, slave, girl, slave.
So
To show that-
if she behaved badly towards Sarah later, I don't blame her.
You don't blame her.
I don't.
Yes,
They were a different class system.
completely.
Yeah.
So when the baby was born, that gave the slave girl one up on the mistress.
Definitely.
And
Especially if the husband is 86 old.
but that elevated her in her own eyes to the point that then she could look down on this mistress who had always looked down on her because she was a slave.
And this happened in the United States back in the days of slavery, when the owner would go and have sex with his slaves, and these children would come out and end up, instead of going to the field, the children and the slave mother would end up working in the house. And so the wife had to look at that child and that slave every
Totally.
day and
Beautiful.
say, you slept with that slave, and now they're in my home.
You don't even have to say it. You just look the way they looks, the way their relationship is.
So it happened even in, I mean, it's not that,
I will suggest that it's happening even today
oh, sure.
in some of those relationships. Let's next one. Please read the next one.
Okay, unselfishness?
Yeah.
These two verses are thus studded with allusions to the peerless character of Abraham and Sarah, their unselfishness and respect for each other.
Yeah, so you can read this text completely differently by saying what? Wow, this level of unselfishness on the part of both Abraham and Sarah in order to have this child continue. Sarah?
Sarah introduces a rival into her home, making a supreme sacrifice to overcome the natural feelings of jealousy and egotism, whilst Abraham takes no initiative in realizing his ambitions for a son, but waits for his wife's agreement, suggestion, and action. However, it is difficult for a human being to remain on those lofty heights.
Yeah, by the way, this woman, Chama Leibovich, was my teacher in Tel Aviv University. So she has volumes of commentary on every Torah portion of the Bible. Brilliant teacher. So she has studies in Bereshit, the book of Genesis. She has studied Numbers, Exodus, all the 5 books of the Torah. Okay, so continue with the next one. Please, who would like to read the next one? It's a small one. Anyone?
As Ramakan points out, Abram took Hagar solely in response to his wife's urging, not out of lust.
Yeah, in case you think that he went, no, there was no lust. The only purpose is he did what Sarah suggested. Abram never suggested it. It wasn't his idea. That's how he can clear himself from that. She made me do it. Yeah, she made me do it. And so that's again from a also wonderful book, Nahum Sarna. He does a commentary on Genesis. Okay, one more, the next page. Anyone?
What a fool she'd been to trust Abram not to get attached to the girl. Men were perfectly pragmatic in the management of herds and the conduct of war, but when it came to sex, they were so easily taken in. She'd seen it happen before with other women's men, particularly when they were feeling their age and their mortality. Once that slave girl got hold of Abram's heart, she would never relinquish it. Sarai couldn't stand the sight of her. Every feature of her swollen body proclaimed her intimacy with her husband.
This is written by a woman. Yeah. So what is the meaning? What is the writer trying to teach us? I mean, don't look at Abraham as a righteous individual. I mean, he needed to supply his needs, and that's how he did it, in the most animalistic way.
That's what I've been thinking about. How do we know that he didn't really fall for her and really enjoy this a lot?
It's time for you to write your own Bible. Start doing it now.
I'm saying he waited for her to tell him to go to her. He waited.
Yeah, he definitely. He had a chance earlier. I mean, remember, 86, the child is born. He can, at age 7, he can go to her. I mean, I wonder how long she was a slave maid in the house. When did she I mean, we know exactly when they were in Egypt, because she is an Egyptian girl. So when they were in Egypt, and there was the little definitely difficult piece to explain, because as a result of the king of Egypt, Avimelech, sleeping with Sarah, Abraham got blessed by gifts from that king, because the king didn't realize that she is the wife. He says, "This is my sister." So it's so interesting, the commentary. Jewish commentaries had such a difficulty in what happened to Sarai in Egypt. Because how can Abraham not defend his wife? Why would he allow for this to happen? So it's a whole different, we can spend hours and hours on how they try to get out of that story. Which is so interesting, because when Isaac was born, what can be the fear on the part of the writer when Isaac was born? It is possible. Isaac is not the child of Abraham and Sarai. He is the child of the king of Egypt and Sarai. Think about this. Is the child legitimate? So they work it out in the commentary. There's no better book than the Bible, guys. Leave all the rest of the books you read and just go there. It's everything is there. Everything is there. The irony, the humor, the difficulty, our lives are there. Our lives are there.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Would you give us the historical context of polygamy here? I mean, we see it later in the Bible, that it's just
Polygamy in Judaism stopped in the year 1000 CE when the chief rabbi at that time said only one woman
But
to a man.
I've always wondered in this story, why did Abraham, who was a wealthy man, not have other wives?
We don't. He definitely had wives. What are you talking about?
Oh, okay.
Oh my God!
So
Once
he-
Sarah died,
No, but I meant at the time that he had.
so there are a lot of women mentioned that Abraham was connected to. If Abraham has to be the father of all nations, it's amazing to look at the names of all the women, other women that he was married to.
Okay.
There were other women around, and those relationships between Abraham and those women. Look at I don't have the Bible in front of me, and that's a mistake. I'll bring the Bible. But the chapter after Sarah dies, he buries her,
No, I know that.
and according to tradition, by the way, he goes back to Hagar. So the way the Quran is woven is that he goes back to Hagar. But he went to other women. He married a lot of women.
So we're.
And maybe he was not married to anyone, but the names are mentioned because if you want to create a world emerging from Abraham descendants, you need to have other women involved in this. So we don't know. Please don't take the story as a factual, yeah.
I don't. But I've always found it curious that there aren't other women mentioned in this time period.
It is possible that their names are postponed because this is the drama. The drama is the triangle between those three characters. Other women will not really create the same kind of story. But please read the chapters after. Before Abraham dies, we know for sure that it was her problem and not his, because he produces millions of children.
Why was it so important then that he has a child that she says he can have, and she's got all these other children?
Because they're not connected to us. Those are the names. All the names have a little bit of an Arabic
Okay.
root, and this is how the Middle East has been populated according to tradition in those days. So your question is why? Why was it important? Because Isaac is our story. Ishmael is their story. And all the rest of the children are the beginning of states and people in Africa, in India. I mean, Abraham becomes then the father of everyone. So it's not Noah, it's Abraham. So you have all those relationships. Am I answering you? I mean, yeah. Okay. Go to the next piece.
Did he marry all the mothers of his children, or just?
Marriage. What is marrying? Do the people that have concubines nowadays marry those people? I mean,
No, but if he started the whole thing, I would.
he started the whole thing. He's responsible for everything. Marriage? What marriage? There is no information at all. We know, for example, Jacob went to sleep with one woman and he ended up with her, and then he had to work 7 more years. There's nothing about marriage and rituals in the Bible. The marriage and rituals were created in later generations. So when you go to a Jewish wedding has no reference in the Bible at all. We don't know what wedding is in biblical time. I mean, we have things they found in archaeological digs, but I would not call relationship between man and a woman marriage. We don't know what it is. We know about circumcision, yes. We know more about circumcision than we know about marriages. So what was the official relationship? How do you seal relationship between husband and wife? You do it through intercourse. The intercourse was actually validating a relationship between those two individuals. In Judaism until today, the way you are effectuating a relationship, and it's marriage, that's why the prohibition about having sex before you get married, That helps. Yeah. I love when she comes down dressed all in white. Okay. Okay. Yes, white is the right color. Let's imagine that you never saw him before. Okay. Sorry. No, but I know it's for the protocol to do it. You know, I don't want him to see me before the wedding. So, I mean, you know, there's this feeling on the part of brides. So there's a few hours before the wedding and they don't see each other. Yeah, okay, what happened? Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. The lines I heard as a rabbi and as a clergy, I'm sure. And sometimes we are dying to explode in laughter, but we need to be polite because we need. But you know, one day I'll write a book with you maybe. Now that you're a doctor, we can sell more because you're a doctor. Yeah. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yes.
In Islamic tradition, with our daughter's married to a Muslim, and in the Islamic tradition in Senegal, where he comes from, there is no marriage ceremony. There is just the two families get together, they talk about it, they decide that they're going to, these two people are marriageable, and they're going to be a couple or a husband and wife. And then the village elders meet, say, yes, it's.
Give their blessing.
And give their blessing, and that's it.
And there's no gifts exchange?
There's a gift exchange. The man gives the woman's family a gift
Yeah.
of sorts. That happened to our daughter in Senegal, in Malamiani, the town where she was when she met her husband. We did not get the gift because we were not there. And so the family that she was living with during the 2 years that she was there, the Mamadou's family gave the gift to that family.
Yeah.
And there was no wedding.
Yeah.
There was nothing. They became, there's nothing legal about it, there's nothing, but they were considered
Yeah.
a couple.
So in Judaism, one.
Is that true also?
No, in Judaism, one becomes married if three things are in play. One is exchange of an object of value, which is usually the ring that you exchange. Actually, there's no exchange. It's the husband gives the ring to the wife. Nowadays, weddings, everyone gives rings. Borsham is happy. The other one is intercourse. And the third one is a document called the ketubah, a marriage document that lists the relationship and everything else. That's it. There's no wedding. Biblical, that's what I said, there's no references to weddings.
Where does the document come from?
The documents nowadays comes from ketubah.com. A legal contract where the legal contract comes
So that the woman has rights on the other side.
Right, but who
that
issues that?
the husband issues this to the or the man to the woman, and he puts down in case of breaking of the relationship, she will receive so many zuzim. There was a coin of ancient time, which none of us know the value now.
Well, in the Muslim tradition, we gave permission for them to get married, but we told them that they had to be married legally in America.
Yeah,
so
to be
that
kosher.
our daughter would be
Yeah.
covered. But in the Muslim tradition, I guess, and is this true back then at this time, the husband could turn to the woman and say, I divorce you.
You know what?
That's it?
We have now an imam in town that we are talking about having him also teach classes here. I will leave all those questions for the imam.
But back at this time, could Abram have turned to Sarai and said, I divorce you, get out of my face?
I don't know if the word divorce existed. I think it is possible that terminology we use now did not exist in that world. So there are, if you don't, maybe you keep her and you just take more wives. Maybe there was no sending away. There was a response. And we know it from the Bedouin. So in Israel we have Bedouins, and we have watched the nomads people, and they keep getting other wives without sending the other one. And everyone has a tent. So the husband is required to establish a home for the new wife, but not to throw the other one. The other one is in a tent with her children. And when they move to graze new fields, everyone moves. Okay, let's continue with the text. Here's another commentary. Who would like to read this one? And we can divide it. You don't have to be responsible for reading it, all of it. Anyone? We are on page 3. It starts with Ramban. Ramban is the name of a commentator from the 11th century. Please.
The emotional pitfalls.
Wait. That's the title. Yes. Okay.
Yes, of selfless acts. Ramban, Sarah, our mother, sinned in dealing harshly with her handmaid, and Abraham too by allowing her to do so. God heard her affliction and gave her a son who was destined to be a lawless person who would bring suffering on Abraham and Sarah.
Yeah, so those are his words. By the way, where is he functioning? Ramban lives in Spain. Why does he have to create this commentary in Spain?
And when was he?
Excellent. Spain is under what? Islamic rule. So it's interesting when you have commentaries, it's always good to check where and when, and then you understand the motivation of the writing. So this, if a Muslim reads this, they feel what? Wow, look at this. Look at how they think about Abraham and Sarah. Okay, go on.
No appraisal of Sarah's character could condone the sin of, quote, Sarah dealt harshly with her.
Wow. It's a terrible on a view of the commentator about Sarah. It's so harsh. She should be punished. Go on.
Yeah. Perhaps the Torah wished to teach us that before one undertakes a mission that will tax all his moral and spiritual powers, he should ask himself first whether he can maintain those same high standards to the bitter end.
This is such good advice for us, isn't it? Wow. It seems so generous, selfless. Hello? Did you think about what will happen at the end? How many of us take actions without really thinking about the end? Spare of the moment. Now. Excuse me? It's never, religious people should never think about now. This is not about self-gratification. You have to think about the rest. Go on.
Yes. Otherwise, one is liable to descend from the pinnacle of altruism and selflessness into much deeper depths than would ordinarily have been the case. A similar principle is no doubt involved in the disfavor with which our sages view the making of vows and the warnings of the Torah itself against the undertaking of unnecessary obligations.
Oh, please. Don't commit yourself to unnecessary obligations. And definitely don't take a vow. The vow lost the power from biblical time. But, if you cannot do it, be careful. Don't do something that you'll regret or you show your moral deficiencies. Go on.
The danger always presents itself that one might fail the test, not honor the obligation and violate the vow. Here we quote Ramban's warning to those who make vows which are beyond their capacity to fulfill.
So in case you didn't understand what this commentator suggests, here's another quotation from what he said. Listen, yeah.
Yes. Such people possess neither the prudence nor the direction to consider for the moment the possibility that they might not be able to fulfill all these obligations. But they imagine that the good intention which they harbored at the time of the vow would be reckoned in their favor.
Just because you said, I'll do it, and then you don't do it, you're not getting any positive grades for that. You didn't finish the job. You know, how many people volunteer to do things in temple, church, mosque? Who follows up? Are you willing to? I mean, that's the idea. And so, highly critical of Sarah. Highly critical.
I have a question.
Yeah. David,
Who is-
please.
Who is Ramban?
Ramban is a Jewish commentator that lived in Spain.
When?
When? So, 11th century.
Okay. All right. So he's interpreting all this.
He's talking about the same
thousands
text.
of years later.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's the treasure.
No, that's fine. I'm not criticizing.
No.
I'm trying to imagine what's happening here. I didn't know who Ramban was.
Yeah, of course. And I didn't give you a lecture about him. I mean, the man is incredible. The man wrote commentary to all the books of the Bible, and they're available. And I mean, most of this was available once only in Hebrew. Many of those commentators are now translated into English and other languages. So, Judaism doesn't end with the canonization of the Bible. That's where Judaism begins.
Yeah, I know that. I just didn't know who we were.
Yeah. So you'll hear all kind of, it's all abbreviation. Ramban is abbreviation of the name Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon.
Oh,
So
Maimonides.
no, that's Rambam. That's a Rambam.
Okay.
So we Jews, instead of repeating all those long names, created this kind of 4 letters. Rambam, Rashi. We have names for all of those, and instead of repeating all the names, everyone starts with Rabbi, and then there are people living in different times, commenting on the text from their point of view, from their conditions, from their history, from their community. That's what's so interesting about listening to the conversation through the ages. Okay, let's finish it now. You did a good job until now. A good deed.
A good deed is only credited to the account of the one who completes it.
Yeah, half a good deed doesn't count. A mitzvah, a good deed, a mitzvah, that's the word for mitzvah. Mitzvah, you get credit for mitzvah in the world to come, only if you finish it. Go on.
Yes. Had Sarah not wished to suppress her instincts and overcome every vestige of jealousy for her rival, had she not dared to scale these unusual heights of selfishness, she would not...
Selflessness.
I'm sorry, selflessness. Oh, big difference. She would not have fallen victim to the sin of, well, Sarah dealt harshly with her.
That's her sin. That's Sarah's sin. Go on. And there may
not have been born that individual whose descendants have proved a source of trouble to Israel to this very day. Who knows?
Wow. So he's taking it to a whole interesting angle. What if she did not offer Hagar to Abraham? Then Hagar will not conceive and have Ishmael, and Ishmael for Ramban in 11th century, 12th century, or 2017 will not bring the chaos of who? Of the relationship between the Islamic world at this moment, not all the Islamic world, but the relationship and the difficulty that world is creating for the Jews. So that's it. So he writes this in 11th century. Look at how far he can see what would happen to that relationship. Now, there were periods of wonderful relationship between Jews and Muslims, definitely golden age in Spain and other places, but there were also periods of terrorism on both sides. I mean, also, we just finished 50 years of occupation. And I use the word occupation, and I use it to my people, and they hate it. But that's the word. 50 years of occupation. Six-Day War was in 67. 50 years. And where are we? What is the price that the occupier pays? It's not only the person or the people who are occupied, it's what has the 50 years have done to the character of the Israelis, of the Jewish Israelis. I mean, those are the kind of questions that need to be asked and talked about. And I think the Tri-Faith will be a great platform to have those conversations. We don't talk about what did we do to the Native Americans anymore. Where are those conversations?
Racial justice group.
A what?
Our racial justice book group is starting a book on standing there. So we are having conversations here.
And the adult forum is doing it.
No, those are the kind of conversations, they're not pleasant. But for example, what happened in South Africa with the Reconciliation Committee, that's what a Tri-Faith need to produce. This is a conversation of reconciliation. And it's not political and therefore we don't deal with this. It's something that we need to deal with this. And it's going to be hard. And that's why the Christians are here. So I think this is exactly the role of this church. The role of the church is to bring the Jews and the Muslims for a forum that will be hopefully fruitful and successful. And I know it's not the Middle East. Just because we are not in the Middle East doesn't mean we can't talk about this. Maybe the idea is to talk here about this because we don't have the rest of the stuff. Okay, let's continue. So this is again a very harsh view of Sarah's action. Let's go to the next one. This is again from who would like to read the next one? The bottom of the page, please.
We all want to make commitments and promises in good faith. We want to believe ourselves capable of good deeds and selfless acts. And sometimes we are.
Yeah, sometimes we are. Sometimes we are. Not all the time. Go.
But how often do our best intentions seem to turn back on us like a bad dream? Why is it?
By the way, anyone can give me an example? It never happened to you. Never happened to us. Never. Every time, no bad dreams. Yeah, this is our life. This sentence can open the door for a conversation for hours here. For hours. That's what the Bible does. That's the purpose of the reading of the text. The text has to open new questions. Go on.
Why is it that we frequently start out to fix a problem only to find we've created a worse one? Sarah makes the critical error of underestimating her susceptibility to that most agonizing of human emotions, jealousy.
Wow. Poor Sarah. Oh, we came to this room loving Sarah. Actually, you're going to hate her now. No, not hating. But those are the characters. Every one of those characters needs to be put to a trial, including God. When was the last time we put God on trial?
I think
Yeah.
it just shows that she's human. She was a human woman going through all kinds of experiences with the same kinds of things that we're going through today.
And we decided to write about that. That's the greatness is that the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Quran did not have to tell those ugly stories. Why can we all continue writing Disneyland stories about the happy end and this is not the world. The world is not Disneyland. And I've been preaching this sermon every year. Wake up! Wake up! This is not the world. Oh, Rabbi, I just saw a couple, and for a wedding, I still do weddings. They gave me permission. I don't do bar mitzvahs, but I do weddings. Those are all the kids that I raised, at the temple. She says to me, Rabbi, at one point in the conversation, if it doesn't work, what do you mean? Why would we have even the notion of if it doesn't work? The other thing is, my parents were married 70 years. And every time I say it to someone, they look at me like I'm coming from a different planet. 7 years? That's like a world record. It should be in the Olympics. Should get a medal. No, it shouldn't. We are cheapening our lives. We need to be very careful of those kind of reactions. Why would you assume that this relationship is going to end? Why would a couple on the eve of... Anyway, that was my commentary. Okay.
Rabbi, I just have a comment.
Yes.
Something you said, Father Bill, really struck me with meaning, and it seems to me that it might be hard, it's certainly difficult for me to make the leap back to a situation where the only choice for a childless couple is to take this action. I mean, in the age of fertility treatment and artificial insemination, we have so many choices. But all I'm thinking is there had to be, many couples facing this very decision, which is, of course, one of many difficult decisions we all face. But this had to be something that was repeated.
Well, that's why they had so many women. I mean, one of the...
Over again.
I think it is possible that this issue of fertility and having big tribes and all the issue of the tribes were to have other women that will be fertile. Yeah. And so this story of Sarah happened maybe under a lot of tents.
Oh, yeah.
So,
By the way, now you forgot to mention a womb for rent. We have now the ability... Guys, I mean, I'm putting it the way it is.
Yes.
What about that issue?
rent a womb.
Well, that's a very vulgar way of addressing.
Well, you can rent the other side too.
That's true.
That's true.
You have a bank for that. Yeah, it's interesting.
It wasn't often, I don't know if this is true back then, but a woman's worth was, a lot of the woman's worth was that child that she has. And that raised...
More than a child, the whole children she bear, yeah.
That raised her up to a level above...
Yeah, we see the jealousy between Leah and Rachel with Jacob. I mean, it's the ultimate. That's the life of the nomad people. I think that the Leah, Jacob, and Rachel relationship is a whole different story, more advanced than Sarah. I think the Sarah, Hagar, Abraham is the beginning of the conflict, but they added other stories about the matriarchs and the patriarchs to add other difficulties to how the life was all about. And it's so interesting that we think about ourselves as sophisticated, living in 2017. We are as primitive as they were. When it comes to our animal emotions and frustration, how are we different than them?
I'm sure that there are lots of commentaries that look at this in terms of the gender roles. I mean, the whole gender role thing in this is fascinating too, that Sarah says to Abraham, take my slave, and Abraham is in a clueless male manner, says, okay, she said so. Must be all right, she said it was. I mean,
Why didn't he object?
Well,
how can I do it? You're the matriarch.
I mean, that's kind of a stereotypical thing, but it's, of the guy saying, well, I guess she said it was all right, and not looking at it any further.
Yeah, Abraham is, all of them are guilty. Yeah. Page 4, please. You have the text in the beginning, but we read the text already. So just the 3 lines in the middle of the page. Anyone?
So now here,
If the main characters,
if the main characters from whom we as Jews and Christians descend are Abraham and Sarah, then Hagar is an appendage, a detour, a digression. Yet she too is blessed by God. We must strive to hear her voice as she stakes out her own place.
yeah. Why is she in the story? You have to relate to her. There was no reason for her to be in the story if it wasn't important for us to hear that voice. So the voice of Hagar. Okay, next. Next page. Now we start dealing with Hagar. We have about 4 minutes. So, you know what? look at page 7. I want to finish with 2 poems about this. Hide and Seek by Dan Pagis. A poem, please. Anyone?
In the backyard of the world, we played, him and I. I covered my eyes. He hid. 1, 2, 3. Not in front of me, not behind me, not inside me. Since then, I've been looking for so many years. So what if I cannot find you? Come out already, come out. You can see what I've been given in. That I've given in.
Yeah. So this poem can be about God, but this poem was written about Isaac and Ishmael, the hide and seek we have been playing for so many years. You know the game. We used to play games before they invented telephones, cell phones. The good old days when we hide and seek. When someone hides so well that you never find them. So there's a metaphor there about the relationship between us and God. But this was written about the relationship. What happened to the relationship of those 2 children? The only time they come back is when? When Ishmael and Isaac meet.
Abraham's death.
In the funeral of Abraham. Which is so symbolic. And then look at the last page. You are definitely, you have permission to read all the rest of the pages. We are skipping. The last page, page 11, by the way, it's a beautiful writing about laughter and tears. And the last page is on page 12. Who would like to read page 12?
Reconciliation.
Reconciliation.
The
Okay.
threat to our salvation is the clash of peoples. Jews and Arabs, offspring of a single father, separated in youth by jealousy, in adolescence by fear, in adulthood by power, in old age by habit. It is time to break these habits of hate and create new habits. Habits of the heart that will awake within us the causeless love of redemption and peace. That's beautiful.
So, I just gave you a little taste of what our doctor will preach next Sunday. I don't know what she's going to do with this. It'll be interesting. Take the material, continue reading, continue study. There's a whole week until her sermon. Go deeper and deeper into this story of the poisonous triangle that the Tri-Faith Initiative is trying to resolve. Thank you. Yeah.
Doesn't the Quran deal with Ishmael and Isaac with other stories?
Yeah, there are other stories in the Quran. And this will be something to demand from the Imam when he comes. He should be the one that will teach this with all the other insights.
Are they different than they are in the Bible?
Yes. Thank you. We'll see everyone next Monday. Please leave the text